Welcome to Stuck Time to Improv. I'm Mary Scott with BusinessRiff, and I want startups to be wildly successful. A unique kind of business to start is a real estate investing business. And I'm so happy to have Jason Yarusii here from Yarusi Holdings, and we're going to talk about just that. Thanks for coming, Jason.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, what made you decide to become a real estate investor in the first place?
So I left college with a business degree, had no desire to go into business, felt a little bit lost in my whole universe of just trying to figure things out, which I'm sure a lot of people do, and just went into New York City, moved there, and started working just various jobs. I was a bartender, a waiter, just all different kinds of things, work construction, just kind of lost in the ecosystem of just figuring things out. And had an event happen where I got hit by a car on my bike, and I had to make some hard decisions to just, I was really unhappy with where I was in the world. So looked hard back at myself, started to make some changes that, on paper looked very small, but it just started to create some momentum in a positive fashion. And lo and behold, I went from, working behind bars to owning a bar, opening and selling a brewery, opening a New York City restaurant before moving out and working in construction. But over the course of this, I at this time had met my wife. She was pregnant with our first child, and I was just doing all these very time-intensive jobs that I had to do something active to create some active activity that would create some kind of revenue, right? So if I wasn't working at the restaurant, there was no revenue. If I wasn't working construction, there was no revenue, right? So I had all these things that required me, and we kept looking at what could we do that could create something that could be valuable where my action did not warrant or create the business, right? The business had a business outside of itself where I could set up the business and it could operate, and became a part of the world of buying apartment buildings, and saw that model as one that was highly attractive because you could buy large assets, you could set up teams, you could get economies of scale, and then you could put in a process that could be implemented by the team that was now part of your process. And that was the first of an acquisition we did back in 2017. We've since acquired a little over 3,000, maybe 3,300 units down here in the Southeast. So probably 30 plus apartment communities and a few other types of real estate that we've now focused on since 2017.
That's quite a story.
It's been fun.
What do people need to start with to start buying buildings like that?
So, like starting a business is sometimes we just start businesses just because we're like, we're to start this business, right? And you find you have trouble with that business because you don't have a direct purpose of what that business is serving, right? You don't have the customer figured out, you don't have the acquisition type figured out. And the same thing goes with real estate. For us, real estate can be anything, right? It could be the office building I'm sitting in. It could be just a piece of land. It could be a parking lot. It could be a high rise. It could be self-storage units, apartment buildings. There's just everything out there. And many people get lost in the world of real estate because they try to do all these different various forms of real estate that all operate completely differently. And we started out in that fashion, is that we were trying various forms of real estate, and it served a purpose, right? We were doing good in them, but we weren't doing great because we weren't highly focused. And when we got highly focused and said, okay, our avatar property is an apartment building that has 75 to 125 apartment units. It would be built between 1970 and 2000, and that was typically when a lot of the workforce housing, we'll call them garden style apartments, were built, right? So we focused on that. That was targeted towards the workforce demographic that was in a certain area. So we only focused in the beginning in Louisville, Kentucky. Then that started to give us a direction of what our purpose was, because it allowed us to go and underwrite those type of properties to learn how those outcomes should be. And so we find assets that are not performing because of typically either the property or the management, but typically it's a hand in hand of both. And then we put in a business plan that makes them, we'll say, perform like assets can in that market. And so we get highly focused on what they should do. Then we go and acquire them. We put in a business plan that typically changes, we'll change, give it a facelift. We'll change the marketing to the program. We'll put in a new operational team, and that will create better revenue streams while optimizing the expenses.
So, what kind of a financial commitment should people have before they even think about doing this?
Again, in real estate, you can do things in various fashions, right? There is no money down options in the world of real estate in various forms. It's a little harder in the transaction size we do because they can be multiple million-dollar transactions. And so from yourself, as a purchaser or an operator of real estate, you have to build up your balance sheet or your net worth because you at some point are going to be the signer in the loan. Now, if that is a red flag and people are listening and say, "Well, I just don't have that, so I guess I can't get started." Well, that's also not the case. As part of your team, you can build out team members to fill some of the roles in the team. So you may have someone comes on who serves as the guarantor that has the balance sheet. You may be the person who finds the leads. Then there's the person who does the underwriting or the person that does the asset management, right? So there's various forms and roles of real estate where, we handle pretty much all of them on our side, but there's other teams out there that have various partners that serve various roles. So you look at that and you say, okay, if I do want to run all the roles, then you typically need to have the amount of a net worth to meet the term of the loan. So if the loan is going to be a $4 million loan, then you need to have a 4 million net worth. And then for the loan itself, they'll typically require that you have cash on hand or we'll say ready cash assets that could equate to a year of debt payments. So if the debt payments are $300,000 a year, they're going to look for $300,000 of liquidity. So that would be the high end. But if you do not have those mile markers right now, you can still start to build a real estate business by looking at the strengths you have and then understanding where some of your weak points are today, and then finding team members that meet the same like-minded goals that can be good, can serve good synergies for your relationship.
Now let's talk a little bit about property management. Would you recommend that someone actually work in a property management company or follow somebody along to get an idea of how stuff works before they try to hire a company?
I will say the latter is a better option, right? It would be like to go and work in a property management company. You may not serve and understand the full business model because you maybe get stuck in a certain form of the operation. So maybe get stuck in the part that you deal with the maintenance company, or you go and you're stuck in leasing and you miss the overall operations, right? Following or tracking someone who works in that company and just understanding the roles, or just going and interviewing these companies, right? For when we started interviewing these companies, we got very good feedback that we should be looking for a company that serves the properties we are focused on. Sometimes people will just hire a property manager and they're the ones who handle all the day-to-day. So I'm here in Tennessee. I have properties all across the Southeast. So say a property in Ohio, right? I'm not the one there collecting rent payments. I'm not the one there dealing with the maintenance. I have a property manager and their team handles the day-to-day operations, right? So our goal is we want to find a company that's versed in operating our kinds of properties. And so many times people will hire a property manager and just hire the first one, but the property manager they hire only deals with single family houses, and now they're trying to run an apartment building. And they're not apples for apples. It's very different models. And so they'll get some disagreements or disruptions in the plan because the team is not highly qualified to do that. So we look first for a company that's very optimized in types of properties, that focuses and very honed in on the market we're in, that has a construction business in or some part that handles some of the interior inside construction that don't have to sub everything out. And that's been in the business for a number of years and has a large portfolio they already manage. So the model is not being tested on us and they can just implement the model that they use on other properties.
Are there key people that should be on your team if you're going to be a real estate investor?
To say this, we acquired a couple hundred units, my wife and myself, before we started to build out our office, our team. Now, it got to a certain point where we were the stopgap, right? We were the ones preventing the growth because if there's 10 things to do, there's two of us, right? There's something's going to get lost and something's not going to be focused on. So from an operational standpoint, you need to have someone again that has the balance sheet, that has liquidity. You need to have someone that can deal with investor relations. We deal with a lot of investors, right? So someone who works in marketing, someone who can drive leads, someone who's very good with with the lead generation in terms of talking to brokers, talking to banks, talking to sellers, and then someone who has some construction background. Right now, those hats can for you be one person, but as you grow, you will find that you will either have to find other partners or other team members, employees that will serve those roles so you can continue to grow in the fashion that's going to meet the business model.
Well, this has been absolutely fascinating. And I think if anybody's thinking about becoming a real estate investor, they should talk to you more. So we'll
Thank you, Mary.
put some links in the comments for people to do just that. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I'm Mary Scott with BusinessRiff. I want startups to be wildly successful. And one of the best things you can do to accomplish that is book a call with me at businessriff.com and let's see how we can collaborate. And join us again next time for Stuck, Time to Improv.